Hey everyone, here are the goals for this video. This is all about learning how to work with Excel. So we're first going to practice calculating a mean, standard deviation, and a t-test in Excel. After that, I'll walk you through the steps to make a bar graph in Excel. And that bar graph is going to include error bars that depict our standard deviation on it. And we'll also go through and format that graph really nicely according to the standards that are used in biology courses. And then, last but not least, I'll show you how to write out a figure caption to go along with your figure. All right, we're going to start out with a data set that looks very similar to the structure of the data that we collected in lab. Only in this case, I thought it would be fun to work with a slightly different data set. So this is from a project testing to find out whether double stuff Oreos actually have more filling than regular Oreos do. So for this project, I actually don't know if this is real data or made up, but we've got a bunch of masses for the filling in regular Oreos in the first column here, and then a bunch of masses for double stuff Oreos in the second column here. So very much like with our lab data, this is started out in a Google Sheet, and so the first thing we need to do is just copy this over into an Excel file, and that should be pretty simple. All we need to do is highlight the cells we want. You can use a couple steps to copy. If I right click here, I can then copy, or I could also use the keyboard shortcut Command C. And then I'm going to go over to Excel. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to show you a little trick for toggling to Excel. I'm going to hold down the Command button and the Tab button, and that lets me toggle through the programs I have open. I'm going to toggle to Excel. Here's my new Excel sheet, and in this Excel sheet I'm just going to then press Command V, or I can right click and press Paste to paste in all of those numbers. There they are. Okay, so first things first, if we want to calculate our means and our standard deviations, I'm going to just skip a cell here just so there's some space between my measurements and my calculations to help me keep them separate from each other. So for this first one, I'm going to calculate means. So again, the formula for this, the way we're going to enter this in this cell, I'm going to go up to this entry box up top in Excel here, and I'm just going to type the equals sign. Then I'm going to type in average, so that's the function name in Excel, open parentheses, and then I need to tell Excel which cells it should refer to for calculating the average. There's a couple ways you can do that. One of those is, if I just look, this is column A, row number 2, so I can just type in A2, and then if I put in a colon, I can use that as my starting range, and let's say I want to go down here to A31, A2 colon A31, and you'll notice Excel has automatically highlighted those, and then if I close my parentheses and I press enter, my Excel will have calculated my mean for me. It's always a good idea to just double check that the formula here matches up with what you want it to. So if I click it again, I can see again it's just working with the cells I want it to use. Okay, so that's great. I could type the same thing in for my double stuff Oreo measurements, or I could make use of a handy shortcut, which is, right now I'm highlighting the cell that has the mean for regular Oreos. If I copy that value, Command C, and then paste it, Command V, and I'm going to check it just by clicking here. So Excel has automatically updated the formula, so it now is selecting cells B2 through B31. So if I press enter, that's giving me my mean mass of the double stuff Oreos. So again, the mean tells us one thing about these measurements, but we might also want to know how much variation is there within each of these measurement categories. So that's where our standard deviation comes in. And the formula for that, so up here in the formula bar, again, I'm going to type equals STDEV, standard deviation, open parentheses, and this time I'm just going to click and drag to select the cells that I want. So Excel will automatically fill in now A2 colon A31, close parentheses, enter. There's my standard deviation for regular Oreos. And once again, I'm going to just copy and paste to get a standard deviation for those double stuffed Oreos. One other thing you might notice here is if we look at the numbers typed into these cells, the numbers have different decimal places. And sometimes if you're learning about significant figures right now in chemistry, you'll also think, well, that's a lot of extra digits down here that doesn't really match up with what's up above. We can adjust the number of decimal places that are displayed. I'm going to go up to home, and then you'll see a little symbol here with little arrows. So if I wanted to increase decimal places, this will increase them, and then I can decrease them over here. And it looks like my weights are mostly to the hundredths, so I think to the hundredths decimal place is probably a good choice. Okay, so that's mean and standard deviation. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate my t-test p-value. And so this is a more complex formula. I'm just going to type in the equals sign, then t-test, all one word, open parentheses, and this is going to take 4 entries. So the first entry is going to be all my measurements for regular Oreos. So that was A2 through A31, A2 colon A31, comma. The second set of numbers will be my double stuffed Oreos. That's where this is giving me the hint that's called array 2. So that's going to be B2 colon B31, comma. And then for the last 2 values right now, we're going to be working with a certain type of t-test. So I'm just going to tell you those 2 numbers should be 2, comma 2. Close parentheses. If I press enter, then I will get a p-value. And notice, so in this case, it's coming out as 0.00. Chances of that are pretty small. So let's increase decimal places here. It may be a very, very, very small p-value. So that would tell me the chances of getting this kind of set of measurements just by chance is very, 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 very small. In other words, the hypothesis that double stuffed Oreos have more filling than regular is supported. Whether or not it's double, that's a little more tricky. Okay, so that's doing these calculations in Excel. So the next thing we need to do now is make a bar graph that illustrates these means and our variation, our standard deviation. So for this step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these measurements, I'm going to copy them, I'm going to move them somewhere else, and in this case, I'm actually not just going to paste them, because if I paste, it's going to paste the formula. I have right-clicked here, I'm going to use Paste Special. The other place you can get to this is under Edit, Paste Special. And this time, I just want to use the numbers that I calculated. So I'm going to have Excel paste values. So I'm going to click Values, then OK. And so up here you can see I have pasted in those values. And for the sake of making a graph, I want to also copy and paste over my column headings here. So I'm just going to copy that, Command C, Command V, and now I have all the information I need in a nice compact location. So to graph, what I'll now do is I'm just going to select the titles for these 2 categories and my means, and then I'm going to go to the Insert menu. And in the Insert menu, in this case, if we use recommended charts, the default here is actually one I don't want to use. What you want to look for is a chart called a clustered column chart, and that might pop up first for you if you're lucky. Okay, so here's my clustered column chart to begin with. Notice a couple things. So I've got labels underneath each of my columns. Great. So here's my mean for regular Oreos. Here's my mean for double stuff. But I need to keep working on this to get it into good shape for our final project. A funny thing is, biologists don't use titles. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this title. Okay. Then up here in the upper left on Excel, there's a little button to add chart elements. And the first thing I'm going to do is I need to add titles to my axes. So I want to add a primary horizontal title. And so this is going to be basically the name of my independent variable. So in this case, my independent variable is type of Oreo. Okay. So I'll do the same for the y-axis. And just a general note, if you wind up in the wrong place, we're working right now in the chart design tab. So I'm going to go add chart element, primary vertical, and in this case my dependent variable is the mass. We'll just say stuffing mass, right, in grams. Okay? Okay, so now I've labeled my x-axis and my y-axis. The next thing I want to do is add that measurement of spread. So I'm going to click the bars, add chart element, and I'm going to go down to where it says error bar. And now here is where Microsoft is tricky. Don't fall for this trick. Do not use this standard deviation option. It will put the wrong number on there. You want to go to more error bars options, okay? When you do that, it'll open up this formatting menu, and here for error amount, we're going to put in custom values. So we're going to click the specify value, and we're going to use our calculated standard deviations for both positive and negative error bars. So right now for the positive value, I'm just going to click this little selection button, and I'm going to select my standard deviation numbers. And so it's put in a reference automatically. So we're in sheet 1, cells D4 and E4. Okay, the dollar signs do something tricky. Same thing for negative values, sheet 1, D4, and E4. Okay, so I've selected those. I'm going to click OK. All right, and notice Excel has rescaled this figure for us based on those new error bars. And the other thing you'll notice here is those are pretty small error bars relative to the size of the overall bar, right? So a regular Oreo tends to have a pretty consistent amount of filling, and a double stuff does too. Pretty interesting. All right, so from here, the next thing we need to do is pop this into a Word document or a Google Doc and add on a figure caption. So I'm just going to copy this figure. And in this case, I'll go over to Google Drive, and I will open up a new Google Doc. And I will paste. And thanks, Google. We can use a shortcut. Okay. In this case, by default, my graph is kind of small. In general, it's best to have your graph stretch across the width of the page so it's easier to read. Once I have this in a document, then I need to start adding a figure legend to it. So instead of having a title, we're going to write out a figure legend down below. So this is our first figure, so we're going to number it, figure 1. And I'm going to kind of give you a writing formula for what goes in a figure legend. So the first sentence of your figure legend is a description of what your figure legend shows. So this is the amount of stuffing found in regular versus double stuff Oreos. Okay? After you describe what's in the figure, the next thing you want to do is sort of summarize the methods that were used to create the figure. And along with that, you want to give an indicator of the sample size. So here, if we go back to our data, it looks like this includes 30 regular and 30 double stuffed Oreos. So what we can say is 30 regular and 30 double stuff Oreos were, let's say, had their filling scraped out and weighed. Okay, so there's methods I use to get those results. Then I might say something about what is depicted by these bars and by the standard error bars. Bars show the mean mass of stuffing in the cookies. There's a shortcut for you. To get a plus minus symbol on a Mac, you're going to use the plus button. You'll get plus or minus. Standard deviation. Include a summary of, the outcome from our statistical comparison. And so in this case, we want to summarize actually the biological outcome, right? So in this case, we could say statistically, we reject the null statistical hypothesis, which means we favor the alternate hypothesis. But what we're really interested in, right, is do double stuffed Oreos have more filling than regular? And the answer is, based on that statistical result, we can say yes. So we can say double stuffed Oreos contained more filling than regular Oreos. And we're going to indicate that we used a statistic to rigorously test this finding by, in parentheses, we're going to put p is less than 0. In this case, it's a really small number, so we could say p is less than 0.00001. For example, if you had a larger p-value, you could say something like p equals 0.62, whatever is appropriate for your statistical test. So once you have all this, then you have a figure that is in great shape, ready to be turned in. And if you want, you can add some more bells and whistles. So if you wanted to change the color of your bars, you could do that. Feel free to play around a little bit with some of those stylistic elements.